The thin December sunlight, pale and weak, slanted through the window of our small apartment, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Outside, the first proper snow of the season was beginning to fall, blanketing the gritty edges of Viridia's sprawling suburbs in a deceptive layer of white. Inside, though, was our warmth, our world. Lily, my 5-year-old whirlwind, was chattering about the intricate social dynamics of her kindergarten class while meticulously coloring a purple dinosaur outside the lines. The scent of slightly burnt toast, my signature breakfast move, mingled with the faint, sweet smell of her strawberry shampoo. This was it. Our life. Simple, often stretched thin, but ours. Being a single mother wasn't the plan, but then again, whose life ever goes exactly according to plan? At 38, raising Lily on my own while juggling freelance design projects demanded a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. Late nights hunched over my laptop, fueled by lukewarm coffee, were traded for these bright, albeit chaotic, mornings. This rented apartment, with its slightly peeling paint and perpetually dripping kitchen faucet, wasn't just rented space. It was the container for every giggle fit, every bedtime story, every crayon masterpiece taped proudly to the fridge. It was our sanctuary, painstakingly built on deadlines met and invoices chased, a buffer against the often harsh realities waiting outside our door. Every payment made on time, every utility bill settled, small victories that maintained the fragile peace of our little haven. The rent was manageable, just. A constant calculation humming beneath the surface of daily life. But we were okay. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our shared dreams whispered in the dark after story time. Today felt like any other Tuesday. Get Lily bundled up, navigate the slushy sidewalks to the kindergarten gate, promises of a special hot chocolate after pickup. Then, back home to the glow of the screen, the familiar dance of client emails and design software, the quiet hum of the building around me. Precarious? Maybe. But it felt stable enough. Until it wasn't. The sound wasn't the polite buzz of the doorbell. It was the jarring scrape of a key turning in the lock, followed by the heavy swing of the door banging against the inner wall. My heart leaped into my throat. Lily froze mid-crayon stroke, her eyes wide. Standing there, filling the doorway, was Mr. Silas Thorne. Our landlord. A man whose presence always felt like a drop in temperature, his sharp suit and sharper gaze seemingly assessing every crack and flaw, not just in the apartment, but in its occupants. He'd never used his key before. Never. He stepped inside without invitation, his expensive leather shoes leaving damp tracks on the worn entryway rug I'd bought on sale. He didn't offer a greeting, just scanned the room, his lips curled in faint distaste. Right, he clipped, his voice devoid of warmth. Rent's going up. Double. Starting next month. I stared, dumbfounded. The contract. We had a contract. Mr. Thorne, I began, my voice barely a whisper, our agreement, there's still another year left. The deposit. He waved a dismissive hand, cutting me off. Market rates, my dear. Market rates have soared. Pity you locked in so low. Unfortunate for you. He took another step further into my living room. Pay the new rate, plus an additional $10,000 for the deposit top-up by the end of the week, or you're out. Simple as that. He actually smirked. Plenty of people willing to pay. Out. Within a week? In December? The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He hadn't just intruded, he'd detonated a bomb in the middle of our fragile peace. Lily had scrambled behind my legs, her small hands clutching my jeans. The silence he left behind after slamming the door echoed louder than his cruel pronouncement. My sanctuary had been breached, the walls suddenly feeling paper-thin, offering no protection at all. What on earth were we going to do? My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Long after the heavy slam of the door echoed through our small apartment, I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, the scent of Mr. Silas Thorne's expensive cologne lingering like a toxic miasma. Lily was still hiding behind me, her small body trembling. The silence he left behind was somehow more terrifying than his pronouncements. My sanctuary, the carefully constructed world I'd built for us brick by painstaking brick, had been violently breached. Those paper-thin walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating me with the weight of his ultimatum. What on earth were we going to do? That initial shock curdled into a constant, gnawing fear over the following days. Thorne didn't wait for his arbitrary deadline. His campaign of landlord harassment began subtly, then escalated with chilling speed. There were the inspections. He'd use his key, often without any warning, letting himself in while I was scrambling to meet a design deadline or trying to coax Lily into eating her vegetables. Sometimes, he wouldn't even speak, just stand there in the hallway, his eyes sweeping over our belongings with undisguised contempt, a silent, menacing presence designed to unnerve. The trespassing felt like a physical violation, stripping away any remaining sense of security. I started jumping at every creak of the floorboards, my heart hammering against my ribs whenever footsteps paused outside our door. Sleep became fragmented, haunted by dreams of locks failing and shadows moving in the corners of my eyes. Then came the photography incident. I returned from the grocery store one afternoon to find him inside again, phone held high, methodically snapping pictures. The worn spot on the sofa where Lily loved to curl up. A stack of my design sketches on the small desk. Even Lily's brightly colored drawings taped to the kitchen cabinet. Documenting the condition, he'd stated coolly when I confronted him, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. Needs a lot of work before I can get proper market value. Look at this wallpaper, atrocious. He ran a disdainful finger over a perfectly intact section near the window. And the kitchen, frankly, it's a disgrace how some tenants live. Every word was a calculated barb, designed to make me feel inadequate, transient, unworthy of the space we called home. He was building a case, a false narrative to justify his illegal demands, and using my life as his evidence. The lowest blow landed a few days later. A sharp, official knock at the door revealed a stern-faced man in a drab suit, flashing an ID from the city's district office. "Ma'am," he began, his tone flat, "we've received a formal complaint regarding unauthorized structural modifications at this residence. Allegations include the removal of internal walls and alterations to the electrical wiring." I couldn't breathe. Structural modifications? I could barely afford to replace a light bulb, let alone tear down walls. It was a lie. A vicious, blatant lie. That's impossible," I stammered, heat rising in my cheeks. "I haven't touched anything. Please, come in, look anywhere you like." The humiliation was intense as the official conducted his inspection, peering into closets, tapping on walls, his expression unreadable. He confirmed, of course, that the complaint was baseless. "Apologies for the inconvenience, ma'am," he said with a hint of bureaucratic weariness as he left. But the damage was done. Thorne wasn't just trying to intimidate me, he was actively trying to destroy my reputation, filing a false accusation to paint me as a destructive tenant, likely hoping to manufacture grounds for eviction that would stand up where his rent demands wouldn't. The injustice burned, leaving a raw wound in my already frayed nerves. What kind of person does that? What had I ever done to him besides pay my rent on time? My carefully constructed world felt like it was crumbling around me. The sense of isolation was overwhelming. My parents were long gone, and my few close friends, while sympathetic, offered platitudes instead of solutions. "Oh, Ilara, that's awful. You should just move." Just move? Where? With what money? Rents in Viridia were skyrocketing, and finding another place that would accept a single mother working freelance felt like an insurmountable hurdle. My contract job, the lifeline that kept us afloat, offered no real security, a downturn in projects, and I could be adrift. The precariousness I'd always sensed beneath the surface calm was now a gaping chasm threatening to swallow us whole. Housing insecurity wasn't an abstract concept anymore, it was a cold dread settling deep in my bones. Fight or flight? The question echoed in my mind constantly. Part of me wanted to pack our bags, grab Lily, and run anywhere away from Thorne's reach. Find a smaller place, a different suburb, just escape the constant emotional distress. But then I look at Lily's drawings, at the height chart marked in pencil on the doorframe, at the worn armchair where we read stories every night. This wasn't just an apartment, it was Lily's home, the only one she'd ever really known. It held our memories, our laughter, our tears. Running felt like letting him win, like validating his cruelty. And where would we even go? The fear of the unknown was almost as paralyzing as the fear of Thorn himself. Lily felt the tension, of course. How could she not? My bright, bubbly girl grew quieter, her laughter less frequent. She started clinging to my leg whenever I moved around the apartment, her small face etched with an anxiety that mirrored my own. "Is the scary man coming back, Mommy?" she'd whisper at night, her voice muffled against my shoulder. Seeing her fear, knowing I was the cause of it by staying, twisted my insides into knots. Was my determination to protect our home actually harming my child? The internal conflict was tearing me apart. Then, one night, the fragile thread holding everything together snapped. Lily woke up crying, her small body radiating an alarming heat. The thermometer confirmed my fear, 39 degrees Celsius. A raging fever. Panic seized me, cold and sharp. Her skin was flushed, her breathing shallow, and she was shivering despite the heat pouring off her. No time for indecision. I bundled her limp form into a blanket, fumbled for my phone to call a taxi, my hands shaking too badly to dial correctly the first time. The ride to the nearest emergency room was a blur of flashing lights, incoherent prayers, and Lily's whimpering cries. Under the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital, Lily looked impossibly small and vulnerable, swallowed up by the sterile white bed. Nurses bustled, doctors spoke in hushed tones about dehydration and monitoring her vital signs. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead, her small chest rising and falling too quickly. I sat beside her on a hard plastic chair, holding her tiny, hot hand, whispering reassurances I didn't feel. "It's okay, baby girl. Mommy's here. You'll be okay." Hours crawled by. The rhythmic beeping of monitors became the soundtrack to my despair. Exhaustion, both physical and emotional, washed over me in waves. I felt utterly drained, defeated. The fight with Thorn, the financial worries, the isolation, it all culminated in this moment of terrifying helplessness. In the sterile quiet of the emergency room, under the humming lights at 3 a.m., I felt utterly, devastatingly alone. The fight seemed too big, the shadows Thorn cast too deep. Was there any way out of this nightmare? In the sterile quiet of the emergency room, under the humming lights at 3 a.m., I felt utterly, devastatingly alone. The fight seemed too big, the shadows Thorn cast too deep. Was there any way out of this nightmare? Just as that thought threatened to pull me under completely, a plastic bottle of water entered my field of vision. I blinked, looking up into the tired but kind eyes of a man sitting near the next bed. He looked to be in his 40s, his expression gentle. "You look like you could use this," he murmured, offering the bottle. "Long night?" I managed a weak smile, accepting the water with a grateful nod. "Something like that." "My daughter," my voice trailed off. "Kids get sick, parents worry more. It's the law of the universe, I think," he said with a soft chuckle that didn't quite reach his eyes. He looked worried too. "I've been here a while myself. Figured you might need refueling." We exchanged a few more words, the shared anxiety of the hospital waiting game creating a temporary, fragile bond between strangers. Mostly, though, I retreated back into my own fear, my focus entirely on Lily's shallow breathing and flushed cheeks. By morning, mercifully, Lily's fever had broken. The doctor, after a final check, gave us the okay to go home. Relief washed over me, so potent it almost made my knees buckle. As I gathered our things and navigated the discharge paperwork at the nurse's station, the man from the night before approached me again. "Heading out?" "Glad to see your daughter's doing better," he said kindly. "Yes, thank you. Much better. And thanks again for the water." He smiled, then tilted his head, studying my face with a puzzled expression. "Forgive me for staring, but you look incredibly familiar. Haven't we met before?" He paused, searching his memory. "Wait, were you, by any chance, the woman who helped an older gentleman who collapsed near a bus stop in the Maple Creek district? Maybe 3 years ago?" It was snowing heavily that day. The question jolted me. Maple Creek, snow, an elderly man collapsing. The memory surfaced, hazy at first, then sharp and clear. Yes. I'd been heading home from a late client meeting. I'd found him slumped on the bench, called for help, stayed with him until the ambulance arrived. His son had rushed into the hospital later, frantic with worry. I looked properly at the man standing before me. The same worried eyes. Older now, lines etched around him, but unmistakably him. Yes, I breathed, astonished. Yes, that was me. And you're his son. I remember you. This chance encounter felt surreal. His face broke into a wide, genuine smile. I knew it. Daniel Sterling. He extended his hand, his grip firm and warm. My father, Arthur, owes you a great deal. You likely saved his life that day. He was having a heart issue. I was so frantic back then, I don't think I ever properly thanked you. Dad's talked about finding the kind woman from the bus stop ever since, but we never knew how. His gratitude felt warm, sincere. A past kindness, offered without thought of reward, suddenly echoing back in this sterile hospital corridor. It was nothing, really, I demurred, feeling a blush creep up my neck. Anyone would have done the same. Maybe, Daniel said, his expression serious now. But you did. And we never forgot. He hesitated for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. Look, this might be forward, but you seemed quite distressed last night. Is everything all right? Aside from your daughter's fever, I mean. He pulled a card from his wallet. I'm a lawyer. I actually specialize in housing law, tenant rights, lease disputes, that sort of thing. If you're ever facing difficulties, please, don't hesitate to call. No charge for a consultation, especially not for my father's guardian angel. A lawyer? Specializing in housing law? The coincidence was staggering. It felt like more than just a chance encounter, it felt like a lifeline thrown into the churning waters of my fear. I took the card, the crisp paper a tangible piece of hope in my trembling hand. Thank you, Daniel. That's incredibly kind. Driving home with a thankfully recovering Lily asleep in the back of the taxi, I clutched that business card like a talisman. Could this be it? Could this be the help I so desperately needed? For 2 days, I wrestled with myself. Pride warred with desperation. Could I really burden this stranger, someone I'd met under such bizarre circumstances, with my messy, humiliating problem? What if he thought I was exaggerating? What if he couldn't actually help? But then I'd picture Thorne's sneering face, remember the violation of him in my home, see the lingering fear in Lily's eyes. No. I couldn't just surrender. Taking a deep breath, I dialed the number on the card. Daniel answered on the second ring, his voice as calm and reassuring as I remembered. Ilara? I'm glad you called. How can I help? And so, it all came pouring out. The illegal rent demand, the contract violation, Thorne's trespassing, the invasive photography, the false report to the district office, the constant fear. I confessed my isolation, my financial instability, my terror of ending up homeless with Lily. I expected judgment, maybe pity. Instead, Daniel listened patiently, asking clarifying questions, his tone professional yet empathetic. Okay, Ilara, he said when I finally ran out of words, my voice thick with unshed tears. First, take a breath. What Mr. Thorne is doing is unequivocally illegal on multiple fronts. Your lease agreement is a binding contract. He cannot arbitrarily raise the rent or demand an additional deposit during the fixed term. His unauthorized entries constitute trespassing. The false report is harassment and potentially slanderous. You absolutely have rights here. Hearing him lay it out so clearly, validating my sense of injustice, was immensely empowering. He also mentioned, Daniel continued thoughtfully, that you pay management fees? Yes, in cash, every month. Does he give you receipts? I fought back. No, he never has. Interesting. There's a strong possibility he isn't reporting this rental income. Tax evasion is a serious offense. He outlined a plan, clear and concise. We need to push back, formally and firmly. Step 1, we draft a certified letter. This puts him on official notice, details his illegal actions, references the specific clauses in your contract and relevant housing laws, and warns him of further legal action if the harassment continues. It shows him you know your tenant rights and you're not afraid to assert them. Step 2. We report the suspected unreported income to the Viridia Revenue Agency, our equivalent of the National Tax Service. It's a separate track, but it puts pressure on him from another angle. Landlords who play dirty often cut corners elsewhere. Taking action. It sounded terrifying, but also right. For the first time in weeks, a flicker of determination ignited within me. We met the next afternoon at a small cafe. Spreading out my lease agreement, the threatening notes Thorne had left, and the notice from the district office, Daniel helped me translate my fear and frustration into precise, legal language for the certified letter. It detailed every instance of trespassing, every threat, every violation, citing landlord-tenant statutes I never knew existed. It felt good. Powerful, even. Like forging armor. That afternoon, we went to the post office together. Handing the certified letter over the counter, hearing the thud of the official stamp, it was a concrete step. A declaration. I would not be silenced. Now, Daniel said gently as we walked out into the cold afternoon air, about the Revenue Agency report. Are you ready to proceed with that? I hesitated. It felt aggressive. Punitive, maybe? What if it just made Thorne angrier, more vindictive? But then I thought of his smug face, his utter disregard for my family's well-being, the fear he'd instilled in Lily. And I thought about other tenants, maybe people without the unbelievable luck of bumping into a housing lawyer in an ER. People suffering in silence. Yes, I said, my voice firm, the hesitation gone. Let's do it. He needs to understand there are consequences. Back at my apartment, Daniel guided me through the online reporting portal for the Revenue Agency. We documented everything meticulously, the cash payments for management fees, the lack of receipts, the dates of Thorne's demands that coincided with known property value increases in the area. It felt like drawing another line in the sand. Walking away from the post office earlier, the weight on my shoulders had felt lighter, replaced by a fragile, fluttering hope. Now, after filing the report, something else settled in alongside the hope, resolve. We had taken a stand. We had used the tools available to us. Now, all we could do was wait and see if the shadows would finally begin to recede. Walking away from the post office that day, the weight on my shoulders had felt lighter, replaced by a fragile, fluttering hope mixed with resolve. We had taken a stand. We had used the tools available to us. But the waiting, the waiting was its own form of torture. Every footstep in the hallway outside our apartment door sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. Every official-looking envelope that landed on the mat made my breath catch. Had he received the certified letter? What would he do? Would he retaliate in some new, unforeseen way? And the report to the Viridia Revenue Agency, what if it achieved nothing? Or worse, what if it somehow backfired? The tense waiting period stretched over a week, each day amplifying the low hum of anxiety beneath the surface of our regained, albeit fragile, routines. I checked the mail obsessively, jumped every time the phone rang with an unknown number, found myself holding my breath without realizing it. Lily seemed to sense the coiled tension in me, often asking, "Is everything okay now, Mommy?" I'd force a smile, ruffle her hair, and say, "Everything's going to be fine, sweetie," while my stomach churned. Fine? I wasn't sure what fine even looked like anymore. Then, one evening, as dusk painted the Viridia sky in shades of bruised purple and gray, the doorbell rang. Actually rang. Not the jarring scrape of a key, but a proper, almost hesitant, chime. My heart leaped, but this time it was laced with something other than pure terror. Maybe, anticipation? I took a deep, steadying breath, smoothed down my sweater, and walked to the door. Peeking through the peephole confirmed it, Mr. Silas Thorne. But he looked different. The usual arrogant posture was replaced by a certain stiffness, his expensive overcoat pulled tight around him, his face pale and drawn in the hallway light. I opened the door, keeping the security chain latched for a moment before deciding against it. Show no fear. I unhooked the chain and opened the door fully, standing squarely in the threshold. He cleared his throat, avoiding my direct gaze for a beat. "Ms. Ilara," he began, the name sounding awkward on his tongue. "I received your communication. The registered letter." So, the certified letter had been effective in reaching him, at least. I kept my expression neutral, my voice level. Years of dealing with difficult design clients had taught me something about maintaining composure under pressure. "Yes, Mr. Thorne?" He shifted his weight, his eyes finally flicking up to meet mine before quickly darting away again. There was a definite crack in his usual intimidating facade. "Look," he said, attempting a tone of reasonableness that didn't quite land. Perhaps my initial approach was hasty. "Market conditions, you understand." "What I understand, Mr. Thorne," I interrupted calmly but firmly, "is the legally binding contract we both signed. The one that clearly states the terms of my tenancy for another year, at the agreed-upon rent and deposit." I held his gaze. "The one that does not grant you permission to enter my home without proper notice." A flicker of his old anger sparked in his eyes, quickly extinguished. He seemed genuinely taken aback by my directness, my lack of fear. He probably expected tears, pleading. He visibly floundered for a moment. "There seems to be some misunderstanding about." "There is no misunderstanding," I stated, the words coming out stronger than I felt inside. Daniel's coaching echoed in my mind. "Asserting rights. Calmly. Clearly. Your demands were illegal. Your repeated unauthorized entries constitute trespassing, which, as I'm sure you're aware, carries legal consequences." He blinked. The mention of trespassing, the implicit threat of police involvement, seemed to land like a physical blow. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The bluster was gone, replaced by a sullen, resentful silence. He looked smaller somehow, less imposing. Deflated. It was astonishing to witness. Finally, he spoke again, his voice flat, devoid of its earlier venom. "Fine. Fine. Stay until the end of the contract term. As agreed." He practically spat the last two words. He turned abruptly, as if eager to escape the encounter. Just as he reached the elevator bank, I added one more thing, my voice carrying clearly down the hallway. "And Mr. Thorne? Any further attempts to enter my apartment without 24 hours written notice will result in me filing a formal police report. Immediately." He didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge my words, just stabbed the elevator button repeatedly until the doors opened and he disappeared inside. As the doors slid shut, I closed my own door, leaning back against it, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for a week. A shaky laugh escaped my lips. Relief, potent and dizzying, flooded through me. It was a victory. My first real victory against him. The landlord backs down. It actually happened. I called Daniel immediately, babbling the news. He sounded pleased, but cautious. "That's excellent news, Ilara." The certified letter definitely got his attention. "But don't let your guard down completely just yet. Remember the revenue agency report? That process moves on its own timeline." He was right. Just 2 days later, Daniel called again, his voice carrying a note of suppressed excitement. "Well, it seems our report to the VRA landed on fertile ground. They've officially opened a tax investigation into Mr. Thorne's rental income practices." My eyes widened. A real tax investigation. And, Daniel continued, "It gets better. Apparently, your detailed report corroborated some existing flags or perhaps even triggered scrutiny from other tenants in his buildings. They might be expanding the scope. It seems Mr. Thorne might have more significant problems than just one tenant who knows her rights." The news was stunning. It wasn't just about me anymore. My small act of self-defense, born of desperation, might actually be helping others, exposing potentially wider wrongdoing. It felt unexpectedly significant. More tangible results followed. A formal letter arrived from the district office, addressed to me but clearly referencing Thorne. It detailed the findings regarding the false report he'd filed against me and included a warning issued to him concerning the misuse of administrative resources in filing frivolous complaints. Another official slap on the wrist. Another consequence. The final piece came a week later, delivered via courier from Daniel's office. It was a settlement agreement. Daniel, anticipating Thorne might wish to avoid any further legal entanglement, especially with the tax audit looming, had approached Thorne's lawyer. Without admitting guilt, Thorne had agreed to pay a sum, not enormous, but certainly significant to me, as a settlement for the distress caused by the trespassing and harassment. No formal lawsuit needed, just a quiet agreement to make this particular problem go away. I stared at the document, at Thorne's grudging signature, at the amount specified. A settlement. Actual compensation for what he put us through. It was almost unbelievable. Knowledge is power, Ilara, Daniel had said. And he was right. Knowing my rights, finding the courage to stand up, and having the right support had changed everything. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The facade of Thorne's untouchable authority had cracked, revealing the vulnerability beneath. That night, curled up on the sofa after Lily was asleep, the apartment felt different. Safer. Truly mine again. The fear that had been my constant companion for weeks had finally loosened its grip, replaced by a profound sense of relief and a dawning realization. The battle was won, the immediate threat neutralized. But as peace settled back into our small apartment, a new thought began to form. Could my struggle, this painful journey through the shadows, actually help others avoid the same darkness? That night, curled up on the sofa after Lily was asleep, the apartment felt truly safe, truly mine. The fear had finally receded, leaving behind a quiet space. The battle was won, the immediate threat neutralized. But as peace settled back into our small apartment, a new thought began to form, insistent and surprising. Could my struggle, this painful journey through the shadows, actually help others avoid the same darkness? The idea felt both daunting and compelling. All that pain, all that fear, could it possibly be transmuted into something useful, something hopeful for someone else trapped in a similar situation? I mentioned it hesitantly to Daniel during one of our now frequent coffee meetups, which had seamlessly transitioned from client-lawyer consultations to something warmer, more personal. I keep thinking, I started, tracing patterns on my napkin, about how lost I felt. How alone. How I had no idea what my rights were. What if I wrote about it? Shared what I learned? Daniel's warm smile was immediate. Ilara, I think that's a fantastic idea. Your experience is powerful precisely because it's real. You navigated something incredibly difficult and came out the other side. Sharing that story, along with the practical steps you took? That could be invaluable legal aid in its own way, reaching people who might never walk into a lawyer's office. His encouragement solidified my resolve. He believed I could do it. Maybe I could. So, one evening after Lily was tucked into bed, I sat down at my laptop, not for a design project, but for something entirely different. Staring at the blank screen, the memories threatened to overwhelm me. Thorne's chilling intrusions, the humiliation of the false report, the terrifying night in the emergency room. It wasn't easy dredging it all up again. But then I thought of the potential reader, someone feeling just as scared and isolated as I had. I started writing, not just about the events, but about the emotional roller coaster, the paralyzing fear, and the slow dawning of empowerment. I wove in the practical steps Daniel had taught me, the importance of the contract, how to document everything, the purpose and process of sending a certified letter, the possibility of reporting unreported income, explaining it all simply, clearly, from the perspective of someone who just learned it herself. Daniel reviewed the legal points for accuracy, ensuring my layman's explanations didn't misrepresent tenant rights, but the voice, the story, that was mine. It felt raw, honest, and terrifyingly vulnerable to put out into the world. I titled it simply, Know Your Rights, How I Fought Back Against Landlord Harassment. With trembling fingers, I posted it to a popular Viridia online community forum. And then I tried not to obsessively refresh the page. Tried, and failed. The response was immediate and staggering. Overwhelming. Within hours, comments started pouring in. Dozens, then hundreds. People sharing their own eerily similar stories of landlord intimidation, illegal rent hikes, feeling powerless. "Thank you for this," one comment read. "I've been putting up with verbal abuse for months, too scared to do anything. Reading your story gave me the courage to look up my lease." Another said, "The certified letter explanation is so clear. I always thought lawyers were too expensive, but this is something I can actually do." Someone else wrote, "Just knowing I'm not alone in this, it means everything." Tears streamed down my face as I read message after message. My personal nightmare, shared, had become a beacon for others navigating their own housing insecurity. The impact on others was palpable, far beyond anything I could have imagined. The post took on a life of its own. People started asking follow-up questions, sharing resources, offering support to each other in the comments thread. It became clear that a single post wasn't enough. Daniel, ever the pragmatist, suggested creating a dedicated space. "This needs a home, Ilara. A place where people can find this information easily and connect with each other." And so, the Tenant Haven Hub was born, a simple online community forum I set up, dedicated to sharing knowledge about tenant rights and providing peer support. Daniel helped compile easy-to-understand summaries of key housing laws, while I moderated the discussions, sharing my experiences and answering questions where I could, always careful to recommend professional legal aid for complex situations. The community-building aspect was incredible. Membership grew exponentially, fueled by word of mouth. It quickly became a vital resource, a testament to the power of shared knowledge. One afternoon, an unfamiliar number flashed on my phone. Hesitantly, I answered. A trembling voice on the other end asked, "Is this Ilara? The one who wrote the article, the one who started Tenant Haven Hub?" It was another single mother, her voice cracking with emotion. Her landlord was subtly trying to evict her with months left on her lease, claiming he needed to sell the house. Her situation mirrored mine so closely it sent a shiver down my spine. Listening to her fear, her desperation, I felt an echo of my own recent past. But this time, I wasn't helpless. I calmly walked her through the initial steps, explaining about the certified letter, directing her to the template examples on the hub, reassuring her that the law was likely on her side regarding the contract term. Hearing the relief, the dawning hope in her voice as she thanked me profusely, it was a profoundly moving experience. Helping others directly felt incredibly rewarding, turning my own painful experience into something constructive. As the Tenant Haven Hub grew, so did something else, the connection between Daniel and me. What started with shared trauma and legal advice slowly, naturally blossomed into something deeper. He became a regular fixture in our lives. He'd sometimes stop by after work, ostensibly to discuss hub moderation, but end up staying for dinner, patiently answering Lily's endless stream of 5-year-old questions or engaging her in elaborate games involving stuffed animals. Weekends often found the three of us exploring Riverbend Park, Lily laughing as Daniel pushed her on the swings, my heart feeling impossibly full watching them. He saw me not just as a client or a victim he'd helped, but as Ilara. Strong, capable, resilient. And I saw him not just as a kind lawyer, but as Daniel, steady, funny, intelligent, and incredibly good with my daughter. It wasn't a sudden romance, but a quiet unfolding, a gradual realization that our chance encounter had sparked more than just a legal alliance. We were becoming a family, a new configuration I hadn't dared to dream of. The hub continued to thrive. Members suggested an offline meeting, a chance to connect face-to-face. The thought terrified me, public speaking? Sharing my story in person? But Daniel's quiet encouragement, "You've already helped hundreds online, Ilara. They just want to thank you," to connect, gave me the courage. The first meeting, held in the back room of a cozy downtown cafe, was overwhelming in the best way. Seeing the faces behind the usernames, hearing their stories firsthand, feeling the palpable sense of solidarity in the room, it was powerful. People shared how the hub had empowered them to confront unfair practices, how simply knowing their rights had changed their interactions with difficult landlords. It solidified my commitment. This advocacy work felt vital. That commitment led to another unexpected turn. A local civic action group, focused on housing justice, reached out. They'd seen the Tenant Haven Hub, heard about my story through the grapevine, and were impressed. They asked if I would consider joining their campaign to lobby for stronger protections in the city's Housing Lease Protection Act, using my experience to raise awareness. Me? Involved in policy? It seems surreal. But again, Daniel was my rock. Your voice matters, Ilara. You represent countless tenants whose stories aren't usually heard in those chambers. You can make a real difference. And so, I stepped into yet another new role, sharing my story at community meetings, contributing to policy proposals, finding my voice in a larger civic action context. Life had transformed in ways I couldn't have conceived of just a year prior. Looking at Daniel playing tag with Lily in Riverbend Park one crisp autumn evening, the setting sun painting the sky gold, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The path had been fraught with fear, marked by landlord harassment and emotional distress, but fighting through the shadows, armed with knowledge and unexpected support, had led us here, to this unexpected, beautiful light. Looking at Daniel and Lily, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun in Riverbend Park, my heart felt a profound sense of peace, almost overwhelming in its quiet intensity. The path here had been fraught with fear, a terrifying scramble through shadows cast by cruelty and indifference. Yet, somehow, fighting through that darkness had led us here, to this unexpected, beautiful light. It seemed impossible, looking back, that the terrified, isolated woman cornered in her own apartment by Mr. Thorne's tyranny was the same person standing here now, partner to a wonderful man, mother to a thriving child, and an advocate for others facing similar struggles. The transformation felt less like a deliberate change and more like a shedding of old skin, revealing a strength I never knew I possessed. This journey, born from adversity, became a testament to resilience. It underscored truths I might never have fully grasped otherwise. The raw, galvanizing power of courage, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. That first step, deciding not to simply surrender to Thorne's illegal demands, felt like leaping off a cliff, yet it was the necessary catalyst for everything that followed. And the empowerment that came from knowledge, it was like being handed a weapon after fighting barehanded for so long. Understanding my tenant rights, learning the language of the law, realizing that Thorne's power wasn't absolute, it shifted the ground beneath my feet. Daniel's legal aid was the key, unlocking doors I didn't even know existed, but the true power came from internalizing that knowledge, realizing I wasn't entirely helpless. And the community, oh, the community. In my deepest despair, I had felt utterly alone. Yet, from the unexpected kindness of Daniel in the starkness of the emergency room to the outpouring of support from strangers on the Tenant Haven hub, connection proved to be the antidote to isolation. Sharing my story, raw and painful as it was, didn't just lighten my own load, it created ripples, fostering a space where others felt seen, heard, and less alone in their own battles. The hub became more than just an online forum, it became a living example of community impact, a network of shared experiences and collective tenant support, proving that vulnerability, when shared, can forge incredible strength. We were helping others, and in doing so, reinforcing our own resolve. Thinking about it now, the threads of interconnectedness seem almost magical, woven with the strands of fate. That simple act of past kindness on a snowy day 3 years prior, helping Daniel's father without a second thought, had somehow laid the groundwork for my own rescue. What if I hadn't been there? What if Daniel hadn't recognized me in the hospital? The what-ifs are dizzying, underscoring how seemingly small choices, small acts of human decency, can ripple outwards with unforeseen consequences, creating pathways to hope where none seemed possible. It makes me believe, truly believe, in the quiet power that binds us together. This world, I know, holds its share of injustice, of bullies like Thorne who prey on perceived weakness. It's easy to feel small, insignificant, overwhelmed by forces that seem too big to fight. But my story, our story, is a reminder that hope persists even in the darkest corners. Help can appear from the most unexpected quarters. Rights, when understood and asserted, hold genuine power. And the courage of one individual, amplified by community, can indeed challenge the status quo. It's not about erasing the shadows completely, perhaps they never fully disappear, but about finding the strength to navigate them, to refuse to let them extinguish the light. It's about positive change, not just surviving, but learning how to thrive again. Now, standing here with Daniel's hand warm in mine, listening to Lily's infectious laughter as she chases a fluttering leaf, I embrace the new beginnings this journey has granted us. We are a family, forged in adversity but bound by love, mutual respect, and a shared future. The Tenant Haven Hub continues to grow, a thriving online community offering support and practical advocacy. My work with the Civic Action Group feels meaningful, a way to channel my experience into systemic change. The path forward won't always be easy, I know that. But I face it not with fear, but with a quiet confidence, an enduring inspiration drawn from the knowledge that even the deepest shadows can eventually give way to dawn. And that strength, the most resilient kind, is often the very strength found in those shadows.